Hi guys, Matt Rowe and Kev Poulton here today for today's Zwift coaching podcast, which is number 11, and this is going to be a Tour de France special. All good your end, Kev, and where about are you?
Yeah, hi Matt, and good to be back again on the Zwift coaching podcast. I'm currently in Monaco, just conducting a bit of a training camp with a few guys over here, and been spending the days doing a bit of motor pacing around the hills at the back of Monaco in France here.
Good stuff. All very relevant to our topic today then. Kev and I, we've both had a chat with a couple of riders who are doing the tour this year. So today's podcast is going to be centered around playing you those chats, and then we'll have a little chat about them. So, Kev, who have you been chatting to?
Yeah, I actually caught up with Matt Hayman, who's currently on a training camp up in Andorra. This is his second training camp leading into the Tour de France. And as always, Zwift is part of Matt's training. And I guess let's have a listen to what Matt has to say about his training at Andorra.
Awesome, sounds good.
All right, guys, on the line with me at the moment, we have Matt Hayman, and Matt is currently on a training camp. Matt, how are you going?
Yeah, not too bad, mate. I'm up here somewhere between Andorra and the French border at about 2,000 metres, getting ready for the tour in the mountains.
Awesome. And from what I hear, it's actually pretty busy out there with riders at the moment.
Yeah, not only pros, there's plenty of pros around. A few live here and a few have just come in or come up from Girona and finishing off their last prep. But also just a lot of tourists or people on group rides. And I saw a bunch of Belgians out there today, so it's really popular. And I think the country of Andorra has really tried to embrace all the cyclists and really try to make it a hospitable place. So they're putting in extra bike lanes, and it's a pretty nice place to ride a bike. Very hard, but beautiful. But it's either up or down here.
Yeah, it is. That's great. Now you're heading into the Tour de France. So what number Tour de France is this for you?
It'll be my fourth. I finished two and I had to pull out of one, so it'll be my fourth tour.
And with those 4 Tour de France preparations, obviously you've experienced different types of training and so on. Can you give us a bit of a brief outline on the type of training you're doing at the moment? Explain some sessions perhaps, and just what you're actually hoping to achieve up there at Andorra at altitude.
Don't you just tell me, because you're my coach?
I
just do what you say. I've got no idea. I'm just a donkey.
I want to hear.
Look, we've been doing a couple, and we started already before this in Lake Tahoe at altitude before Tour of California. We've been implementing some endurance rides and finished them off with a Zwift session either in the evening. Most days having not a double session, but a couple of times a week doing a double session, doing a bit of intensity on Zwift in the evening after probably a 4 or 4.5 hour ride. So, for example, yesterday we did almost 5 hours up here, and then in the evening I had a, what did you call it, cruise efforts.
Were they cruisy?
Yeah. They became cruisy because I couldn't hit the power anymore. But no, it was a pretty solid session up here. It's a bit of a makeshift. You can do Zwift anywhere, but I didn't have my fan, and I'm at 2,000 meters, so it was a tough session. But I got a sweat on, and that's another kind of attribute of doing these Zwift sessions is also the heat acclimatization for July, and racing in France. It's going to be hot next month, so. Yeah, so that's what we've been getting into. So, and just generally also doing the climbing and the general work that you need to do before the tour. So, getting in some long days and also getting some good recovery. So, it's really a kind of a tough one. You want to get the work done, but you definitely don't want to start the tour fatigued at all. But you need to definitely be on the game from the first day.
Yeah. Okay. And I guess leading into a Grand Tour or a racing period, how do you find the double ergo sessions, the ergo sessions of an afternoon? Does it bring your form up quickly? It's obviously very hard training, but in terms of the sensations you feel, how do they go?
Yeah, look, I'm a couple of guys here. They're not quite into it as much as I am. It doesn't seem to, it is a bit of a different tactic, and we use it also just doing endurance days and a gym session in the evening. So I I've kind of come to recognise the benefits of the double days. Sometimes it means I get away with a little bit less training in the morning because, you've got the second session in the evening. No, but I think even I was struggling with a bit of morale a few weeks ago, and I told you just put some double ergo sessions on my program now. Not sure many bike riders would ask for that. It sounds like
doesn't
death.
sound quite right, does it?
No,
Yeah.
but for me it was look, I could get some really quality work done. And I find the motivation of riding with the other people on Zwift or doing a set workout that you kind of force yourself to finish it. Once you've started one of those workouts, it's pretty hard to actually turn it off. So you just kind of slave through it. And I got on and I was doing a couple of double sessions, and I really felt the form came up straight away from that. So yeah, I'm a bit strange that way. I like my Zwift sessions.
That's good to hear. We know it works anyway.
Yeah.
All right, so leading into the Tour de France, what kind of a role are you going to play for the team, and what are your hopes and expectations for the race?
Look, the team's going down the GC path for the Tour. So, yeah, it will be the first 9 days will be the most important for me, and a couple of the other guys are just there to really shepherd Adam Yates around the bunch and try and save as much energy for him as we can, keep him safe, but also, make sure he's in front of any splits or crashes. And it's going to be really hectic, and it's not an easy job. But yeah, no, looking forward to it, and he's obviously going really well. So hopefully, and then when we get into the mountains, I can switch off as much as I won't be called upon to work, but then its priority is getting through the day each day and making sure you make the time cut, which is not so easy. And then there's some intermediate stages in there, which I'll be called on again until the bottom of whatever climb, and just positioning, and keeping people out of trouble.
Yeah, okay. Well, it's obviously a very frantic and hectic opening week, but there's one stage there that I expected you might have mentioned, and there's a stage with a few cobbles in it.
Yeah, stage 9, the last stage before the rest day, 150 or 155k. Finishes in Roubaix, quite a lot of cobbles actually. It's going to be a great stage. I'm not sure I'll get a free range there to ride my own race, and probably the team will call on me to use my experience in that race to again shepherd Yatesy around. So hopefully he's still in a good position there, and hopefully we've had a good team's time trial, and he hasn't missed any splits in the crosswinds, and if we can get him to that point and end of stage 9, as much as I'd love to have a crack at that stage myself, if he was in a top position on GC, that would be a big box ticked for myself.
Yeah.
As far as the Tour.
Yeah. Well, it shows you're the ultimate teammate to, I guess, sacrifice a chance at racing a stage that suits you for the good of the team, and that's probably one of the big reasons why you've had a long and a great career so far.
Yeah, I mean, I think that stage will be raced quite differently in a Grand Tour as it does as Paris-Roubaix. Paris-Roubaix is a one-day race, and you leave it all out there, and it's all classics riders riding together. As a stage of the Tour de France, there'll be X number of teams where their only goal is to keep one rider out of trouble. It just really changes the dynamic of the race. So, there may even be less opportunities for me to ride it as a classic. Even if I did get a free range, you're kind of stuck with the way the race is going to be ridden.
Yeah, of course. All right, Matt. Well, thanks for your time with that. Enjoy the rest of your time in Andorra and preparing for your 4th Tour de France. And we'll all be looking out for you in the Tour and following your results. And good luck with it.
Yeah, thanks, man. I might just have a nap now because you've just given me 2 back-to-back 6-hour days. So I think I'll just go to sleep.
It's been a good training block. So
thanks, mate.
Well done. All right. Well, good luck with that.
Cheers, mate.
So, yeah.
Lovely. Wow. Good little chat you had there, Kev, and very insightful. Again, Andorra, I've never ridden in Andorra myself, but from what Matt's saying there, he said very tough, and it's up and down. So I guess it's a place to go if you're extremely fit or a Tour de France rider. Yeah,
it is a really good location for training. But as you said, it really is. You're either climbing all day or you're descending long descents all day as well. So for a sprinter, it's not an ideal location to go to as final preparation, but for the workhorses and the GC guys, it really offers a great climate and terrain for training in.
Yeah, that's an interesting one, that, because I guess even the sprinters have still got to get over those mountains, although they're not looking to perform in the mountain stages. They're going to have to train to some degree in the mountains. I mean, you obviously look after a couple of World Tour sprinters. Would this type of training, altitude training, really mountainous stuff be completely off the cards or in moderation?
So this is the hard part with the sprinters. So we just did a training camp in America at Lake Tahoe before Tour of California with our sprinters over there. But the location there provided us with 100-kilometre loops at altitude without any big climbs in them. So that was really good for the sprinters and for the fast twitch guys. But for the Tour de France, obviously with the amount of climbing that's involved in it, the long climbs, they really take the leg speed away from the sprinters. So it's not ideal to go to a place like Andorra. They're better off going to other locations that offer some flat terrain. But for Matt, with his role being one of the workhorses, and he's there to shepherd Yatesy around France, he's got to spend a lot of time out in the wind and a lot of energy looking after the riders there. So a lot of his efforts are going to be just long, solid tempo efforts, and really having to be the backbone of the team in the first 9 days. That's his goal, as he mentioned in the interview. Yeah,
absolutely. And one of the things you mentioned in the interview, Kev, was about the ultimate sacrifice. I think those are the words you used. It's just this idea that for 3 weeks you've got 8 riders in a team, you've got maybe 20 support staff, and they're all pulling in one direction. So in Mitchelton Scott's case, keep Yates out of the wind for 3 weeks. I mean, that is the ultimate sacrifice, right? And especially for Matt, who would have a genuine chance at stage 9, the cobble stage. He sat there saying, my priority is the greater good for the team.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not even part of his game plan is to have a crack at that stage. So he knows he's there for the good of the team, and that's what he gets paid to do, and that's what he does well, and that's why he's been in the peloton for, I think, going on 18 years now.
Yeah, fair play. 18 years. Fair play, fair play. And just obviously touched upon, quite interesting, the Zwift sessions that Matt does, and he did say it's not for everyone, a bit of personal preference. And the bit he said, I kind of thought, wow, that's an interesting one. Is for morale, he said, give me two ergo sessions. He wants to jump on Zwift and smash himself twice a day. That is a special character, right?
Yeah, for me, that point that Matt made about wanting to do double ergo sessions on Zwift, that really sums up the quality of the training. So he knows that he's about to ride a Grand Tour, the biggest one of the year. He needs to be at his best fitness. What's going to provide the best training for him? And it's ergo sessions. So it really sums up the benefit that anybody can get from riding on Zwift, on the ergo, indoors. The gains are there to be made. But obviously we need the endurance as well. So as Matt mentioned there, a big part of his day is to do 4 or 5 hours in the mountains in the morning, have a quick rest, and then jump on the ergo in the afternoon and do a hard interval session without the fan at altitude, so we're getting even more response to the climate and to the conditions, and making bigger gains that way as well. And we know it works. So we've seen in the last week Matt's training. So he had a race at Slovenia 2 weeks ago, and we knew from that race he still had some gains to make in fitness. And the training camp, the altitude, the Zwift sessions have really brought him up to be ready to race the Tour de France now.
Awesome. And again, the point you made about heat acclimatization, riding around France for 3 weeks in 30-degree plus heat, unless you are acclimatized for it, you're it's going to be pretty miserable. And that's where going out riding in the mountains through really hot terrain is one way of doing it. But of course, Zwift indoors, put the fan on low, or maybe turn it off if you're really brave. Great way to do it as well. But just think back to Matt's point, I guess, because he's had this super long career, and he's had so many years of riding a bike. He's kind of got that endurance almost built in him, I guess. So a lot of that top end quality stuff, he can get around the tour, let's say, on arguably less volume in training compared to kind of a neo pro, for example, who's trying to do his first tour, purely because he's just got that massive history of a massive bank of endurance of hours built up over the years and years. So I guess for the more experienced elder pro, quality over quantity is even more true than for the younger guys.
Yeah, definitely. You summed it up there. That I guess there's a lot of muscle memory there. The guys they gain endurance over the years, and I think what's coming out of modern cycling training now is the need to ensure that riders are fresh and completing quality training. The intensity over quantity now really is the key to anyone's career.
Yeah, absolutely. And so if you use Zwifters out there, if you're new to the sport maybe, and you're joining a friend of yours has been cycling for 10 years or so, there's no getting around the fact that he has got 10 years of being a cyclist in him, and that is going to stand him in good stead. So it will take a bit of time to close that gap, I guess. But by training specifically and smartly, Zwift is a fantastic way to do it. You can help close that gap and make up those lost years. Great. Really interesting chat right there. And I've also had a chat with another World Tour rider who's doing the tour. It's actually my brother, Luke Rowe. So we'll play you my chat with Luke. So good to have another Rowe on the podcast. And we're going to talk to you, Luke, about the Tour de France. So this will be your... how many tours have you done now?
So I've done 3, 2015, 16 and 17. And it's all been fortunate enough to be part of the winning team each time. So, hoping to go and do the business again.
Good man. And your first tour was not Tour de France, but your first Grand Tour, Vuelta. That wasn't quite as pleasant experience, was it?
No, that was the other end of the spectrum. So, I did my first Vuelta in 2013 and my second Vuelta in 14. So I've kind of done one every year from 2013 onwards. My first Grand Tour, in 13, I didn't finish. I think I pulled out on stage 16 it was. I think, to be honest, I wasn't ready for it at the time. And I ended up getting sick and had to pull out through sickness. But essentially, I think I just wasn't fit enough and wasn't up to the plate at the time. And that's essentially what led to me getting sick, So, yeah, tough time.
Do you think the heat was a big factor at the time? Being back home with mum and dad and following the forecast, the heat was just like well into the 30s every day. And your first Grand Tour, was that a big factor, or was it simply just out of your depth?
I think it was a mix of a few things. Like I said, I wasn't up to the plate. But then it was into the 40s actually, and it was just people often ask you, "Oh, how do you keep cool on the bike?" As if there's some big secret, and it's just. There is no secret. You just grind it out, suffer, and it's like riding in an oven, and you just kind of got to get on with it. And I think that is another angle, that really did kill me. And being a younger Welsh lad, I had no kind of like baptism of fire, and that I think the heat did definitely have a factor.
Yeah, no doubt. So how is this for an analogy? A rider's ability in super endurance events, so Tour de France, is like a fine wine. It gets better with age. Do you think age and sheer number of years and time spent riding a bike helps with events like the Tour?
100%. I agree with that statement. I think year on year, I've certainly felt I've got stronger and been able to, hold myself throughout a Grand Tour and be a lot more consistent. I think also it's a big mental battle, any Grand Tour. Once you've completed one once, 2-3 times, you know what to expect, what to prepare for. I think it's, when you get into the end of the second, third week, everyone's on their knees, I think, no one's fresh. It's just how you manage that fatigue. And that's when it becomes a mental battle. And okay, my legs are hurting, but you just got to get into your mind that everyone's legs are hurting, and you just got to. We say stick the knife in your mouth. I think it's foreigners saying stick the knife in your mouth. So kind of just grit your teeth and get on with it. And I think once you realise that everyone's as tired as you, that's when you start to accept it and just get on with it a bit more. But definitely, I think year on year. The more Grand Tours you can get in the bag, the better you're going to become at them.
Yeah, makes sense. And that mental battle, I think, for riders of all levels, not to be underestimated. Even for guys doing sportifs and stuff. Often it's not it's not the physical side of things that enables them not to keep going. It's just they think, it just hurts too much, and they kind of give in. Obviously, in the Tour for you, and you've had a lot of success with Sky, and when you've got a jersey to defend, and you're in the leading team, that's got to really help with that mental strength, right?
Yeah, I think it's always easier to do a job when you're doing it for a winner, when the team is winning, when the team is successful and the guys around you. It just creates a great environment to essentially work in, and you just kind of get on cloud nine. And certainly we felt that last year in the Tour, where we had 4 guys in the top 10 and took the yellow on the prologue, and straight away we were on the high horse. It was like, your tails are up from the start, and the morale's up, and that just kind of snowballs. Then day on day, you just get more and more confident of yourself and of your teammates and of your leader. And as a result of that, you just perform better and better. That being said, last year was the worst 3 weeks of my life. At the Tour de France, I crashed on 4 or 5 of us actually crashed on stage 1. I broke a couple of ribs, and that was on stage 1, so that was pretty horrible. And I finished last in the Tour de France, got a lantern rouge for my work. But that was absolute hell. But that's all part of the mental battle that we're talking about. Going through and suffering all in just to try and help the team as much as possible. And I don't know if Greg Henderson will be on this conversation you're having now, but I know he had a similar thing the year before, I think, maybe 16 or maybe even 15, where he broke some ribs and finished the race. So he'll know exactly what it's like. But like we were saying with the mental battle, that kind of epitomizes it, that you have to, kind of go through them pain barriers to get to the end goal.
Yeah, good stuff. Hendy will give us a lot of comment on his ribs, I'm sure. You're saying it's the worst 3 weeks of your life. Is it worse than GCSE exams at 16? Really worse than that?
Well,
pretty bad times exams, right?
Well, I showed up for the Tour de France, but not the same can be said about some of the GCSEs.
Keep that quiet. Mum might be listening to this.
Yeah, I'll be in the doghouse now, won't I?
So, looking at the Tour this year, what's your role within the team?
So, traditionally, for Team Sky, we've always taken 2 kind of flat helpers, we call them. And then you have, middle mountain men, and then you'll have the top mountain support climbers, You kind of categorize it. So I think we'll have 2 kind of flat helpers. I'll be one of them. So I guess, it's quite self-explanatory in some sense, is that, my predominant role will be to be there on the flatter stages and support my teammates. If we were to get in a position where we took the jersey, it would instantly I'd be the first guy who'd have to ride to control the brake. Obviously the cobbles, that was stage 9. I'll have a big role to play there. But essentially for myself, it's kind of just being there on the flatter days, and then on the hillier days, doing as much as I can for as long as I can, then getting popped and just surviving. So it's kind of, predominantly flat. But that being said, when it goes uphill, it'd still be nice to pass a couple of climbs and go a bit into the race and just be there as long as I can for the boys. Yeah,
and Greg's spoken about it before, and in the role of being a sprinter or domestique, okay, mountain days aren't going to be your chance to shine, but by no means is that a day off or a rest day, right?
No, exactly. A flat day where I'm doing my job and I'm towards the front, compared to a mountain day where I'm potentially just trying to survive. I think that the mountain day is harder, and I've been in gruppettos with Hendy, and we've had some hard days together actually. But yeah, you kind of got to do your maths at the start, look in the road book, see how much time you can lose, see where exactly that means you have to survive until to get dropped and then still stay in the limit. But people have got this kind of mindset that being in the gruppetto is easy, and it's kind of a laughing stock and you just kind of roll around. But you're not in the gruppetto out of choice, you're there because you're forced there. and you have to ride still bloody hard to get there, to get to the finish line within the time limit, which, sometimes you can look at the results and it can be as much as 30 or 40 minutes down, and you think, oh, well, they've obviously just cruised, that's easy. But when you're losing 30 to 40 minutes on the world's best climbers over potentially 3 or 4 15 to 20k climbs, this is a pretty small percentage. So you're actually busting the gut to make the limit some days. So it can be underestimated on how hard, even just to finish the Tour de France or finish one of the mountain stages within the time limit is a big ask. So they're pretty tough days.
Yeah, so what you're saying is your Lantern Rouge last year was a lot of blood, sweat and tears went into that, right?
Yeah, I got to sell that Lantern Rouge as much as I can,
Did you win any money for that? Was there prize money for Lantern Rouge?
Are you mugging me off?
No, seriously. Seriously.
No, there's no prize money. I think actually,
you got something, didn't you? You actually got a Lantern Rouge.
I actually got a red lantern,
yeah.
And traditionally, you get the post-tour crits, which are mainly held in Belgium and Holland. After the tour, where they get some of the riders from the Tour de France to go and ride criteriums in different villages, and you get paid to do them. And traditionally, the Lantern Rouge got paid pretty good money to go there and ride the comesses and criteriums. And it was actually some riders would battle to get it. If they were in the last few, they thought, well, I might as well be last and last but one, because then I'll get more money at the criteriums. But that was in the past. Now I think, there's not so much honour in having the Lantern Rouge, but I'll take it.
Yeah, good man. So looking briefly at the training and the types of sessions that you do to prepare for the Tour de France, just to give listeners a flavour, what is required day in, day out in the run up to the Tour. You're on a training camp now. Do you want to talk us through where you're at and what you've been up to the last week or so?
Okay, so it's a pretty broad question, so I'll try and take it off in a few different sections, I guess. So for myself, I finished generally I finished the classics, the Cobble Classics, start of April, have a bit of a break, and then, all focus shifts towards the Tour de France. So I've kind of got 2.5, 3 month period there to A, shed a couple of kilos, and B, try and change my abilities from short, sharp efforts that you need in the classics to longer, more controlled efforts that you need in the Grand Tour. So essentially, you train for what you want to be. Mm-hmm. So them efforts change from, maybe for the classics you're doing some efforts behind the motorbike and you're doing 30 seconds, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 minute capacity style efforts. Whereas that all shifts towards the Tour de France to more 10, 20, 30, sometimes even we've got some efforts that we do well over an hour and a half for them long climbs. So essentially, what you want to do is what you got to train for. So just including them longer, less intense efforts over the months towards the Tour de France. And this week here we're up in Isla 2000. We've had which is just outside of Nice. We've had 6 riders here in total, kind of dropping in and out. Some guys have gone back for the nationals and what have you. And it's just been, I guess it's been pretty big hours. It's been, 30 plus hour weeks with, I'm guessing off the top of my head, but for sure 25,000, something like that, altitude meters. So it's been, done a big block of hours and climbing. And from now, kind of a week out, you got to start to take your foot off the gas a little bit, because you're not going to gain anything between now and the start of the Tour de France. But if anything, you can lose it by trying to overcook it. So it's just a fine balance. You're not tapering, but you're definitely taking your foot off your gas in the running in the last week now.
Yeah, awesome. Again, a few listeners, there'll be no surprise there. If you look trying to compete in a 3-week Grand Tour where you're riding, every day, apart from a couple of rest days for 3 weeks, endurance is absolutely critical. Hence why Luke's just banked 30 hours in the last week or so. That's great insight there, Luke. Me, Greg, and Kev will have a little chat about some of what you said and kind of explore in a little more detail. One last thing, in game, when you give someone a ride on, you know what that sounds like. So I'm going to ask you to impersonate that. The ride on. So in your own time, give us your best ride on.
Right on.
Good man. Top man, Lukey boy. Well, thanks for that, mate, and all the best for the tour. There you go. There's my chat with Luke, and obviously you can draw a lot of similarities there between Luke and Matt Hayman. Obviously, both in a fairly similar role. I guess they're going to be big rivals actually for the next 3 weeks in France.
Yeah, it's ironic that the two are really going to be going head to head in terms of looking after their GC men. And as you said, they are very similar riders. But I was surprised that it's only Luke's fourth Tour de France. I thought he'd been around a lot longer than that. So it's good to see him hitting his fourth lap of France.
Yeah, I think it's because he's he's always been in that successful team, spent so many stages on the front. People just see a lot of him, and I guess you hear a lot of him in the press because he is on the front of the bunch a lot for Team Sky.
Yeah, but for me, what really came out of his interview was the different preparations. We've both just said that the two riders are very similar in their characteristics and their role they're going to play for their team. But they have had pretty different lead-ups to the Tour de France in terms of their training, haven't they?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, you're looking at, especially the contrast I was going to draw actually was between the early part of the season for Luke and the Tour. So kind of the differences, the transition from Classics rider to Tour de France rider, which is obviously a similar or the same transition that Matt's made. And the differences there being for the Classics, you've got to be good for one day. So as Luke mentioned, it's 30-second efforts, sprint efforts, perhaps 1-2, couple of minute capacity efforts to simulate, going up bergs in France or across sections of cobbles in Paris-Roubaix, whatever. Whereas Tour de France prep, completely different animal, where you're trying to be good for 3 weeks. So super endurance sport, and as Luke acknowledged, and we both agreed. The more time you spend in the sport, the more endurance you have, the more efficient you are as a bike rider. Hence why older riders tend to do better in the Tour and they're more suited to them. And Luke kind of said, he's getting better and better every tour he does. And the training in the Tour, then Luke spoke about doing 10 to 90 minute efforts. I mean, that's a hell of an effort. Doing kind of 90-minute efforts. I guess it's going to be zone 3s, low cadence type stuff up the long climbs to obviously replicate what's required in the Tour de France.
Exactly, and obviously Luke and his team have a big target to the team's time trial as well.
Absolutely, I think that's going to be quite a key stage. I think the team time trial, especially with Sky. Obviously, you've got Chris Froome's probably going to be the leader. But you've also got Geraint Thomas, who perhaps secondary leader you might call it. So the team time trial, I know it's an opportunity for the team as a whole to either gain a load of time or lose a load of time. So absolutely key stage where I think Matt and Luke are going to be relied upon.
Well, I guess from the interviews the listeners have had listened to, they can watch the two riders in the Tour de France and see how they perform. They might see them side by side fighting for their part of the road going around France and potentially we can catch up with them during the Tour de France and see how their training paid off for them as well.
Yep, that would be that'd be pretty cool to do. So say good luck to Matt and the team, and obviously Luke as well. Fingers crossed for them both. But again, I guess got both my fingers crossed for Luke and Sky. I'll cross one finger though for Matt.
Good on you.
I'm joking. Good stuff. Well, awesome. Well, as you listeners know, attached to every podcast we have a Zwift session that you can complete. So it's quite fitting that with Kev coaching Matt Hayman in preparation for the Tour de France, we may as well use one of the sessions that he's used. If you don't mind giving a couple of secrets away there, Kev.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is a great opportunity for listeners to experience Tour de France training and what the preparation requires. So the session that Matt spoke about in the interview was called Cruise Intervals Number 3, and listeners can download this and give it a go themselves. It's basically 3 12-minute efforts. They're called cruise intervals because they're just on the threshold But what makes them different is that they open up with a 30-second hard effort to build some lactate up first. And then after that, every minute it's changing between 92% of threshold up to 97% for the next 12 minutes. So it sounds easy. That's why I call it cruisy. But as Matt said, he wasn't so happy at the end of that session. But it's certainly brought him up to good form. So give it a go and let us know how you go with it.
Yeah, awesome. I'm getting the vibe that you're a hard taskmaster, Kev. You know, those cruisy interval, 2 back-to-back 6-hour days. You know, cracking the whip there.
Made me think I might have to change the names of the sessions that we prescribe. Might have to come up with some nice, friendly names instead.
Yeah, good man. All right, so cycling lingo explained. Kev, you've got 30 seconds to explain the term all-rounder.
All-rounder, okay. I guess he's the jack of all trades, master of none. She is the rider that can climb well, can sprint well, and can time trial. Hard to win a race when you're an all-rounder because you don't really excel in any particular area, but generally always part of the race and just a very good rider that is dependable. All teams need a good all-rounder because they are so reliable and they're always...
Time!
Oh, geez, that does go fast, doesn't it?
I think I got the picture. I know exactly who you're talking about. And I guess, yeah, all round, I guess, you know, it's not a bad thing to be an all-rounder because it means, you know, when you're out riding with your mates, you probably never be the worst of something. But again, it doesn't, I guess, being an all-rounder doesn't give you many chances to shine, does it?
Have to be crafty.
Have to be crafty, yeah. So I guess a lot of that, it's quite hard to teach that craft, isn't it? That racecraft.
Exactly.
Good stuff. All right. Next up, quickfire question. You ready, Kev?
Ready.
Deep section wheels or low profile?
Oh, that's an easy one. Deep section for sure, just because they look cooler.
That's exactly what Greg said. I think Greg's words were, deep sections look cool, full stop. So, yeah, and I agree. Deep sections for me, for sound, speed, and aesthetics.
Yeah, bigger stickers, bigger sound. Yeah, bigger is better.
Stickers. Absolutely. How deep is too deep though, Kev?
Yeah, probably the 808s. That's pretty deep, isn't it?
Yeah.
Was it the 60 mil? Probably 60 mil would be a good deep dish rim.
Good for you, yeah. Awesome. There we go. Deep sections all round from us.
Yeah.
All right, coming on to the Q&A section. So we've got a couple of questions here that we're gonna go through. The first question is from Jasper Ducker that was asked via Twitter, and Jasper's asking, what does TSS mean? So obviously an acronym that you'll see in many training analysis software packages. Training stress score. I mean, anyone can Google what it means, but in simple terms, Kevin, what would this mean to you?
Yeah, well, training stress score is a simple way to quantify the work that an athlete is doing. It can be used for running or riding or all sports. We should give credit to Dr. Andy Coggan, who pioneered this, but he actually built upon the original idea from Dr. Eric Bannister using what was called the TRIMPS model based on heart rate. So it's been evolving over time, but it actually gives us a very good metric to quantify the training load, and it's based on intensity and duration. So to give an example, if you were to go full gas for 1 hour, you should be getting a TSS score of 100. That's the limit that you can get. But not every ride's going to be 100. So then from there, we can give an example of a club race, might be over an hour and a half, and you might get a TSS of 100 because it was 90 minutes, but you were racing at 85% of your threshold. So that's where the duration part comes into it as well.
Yeah, makes sense. So yeah, if anyone out there, if you are starting to, or if you do use or starting to think about using TSS to, monitor the amount of training you're doing, if you're getting more than 100 TSS score for a short 1 hour session, then that basically means your threshold is wrong, because that's impossible. So retest, reestablish your FTP, because that's what it's all based upon. You know, these metrics, your TSS, your chronic training load, and your ATL, for example, in Training Peaks, what I use, it's all based off your FTP. So if your FTP is off, all the algorithms that support these metrics are going to be off as well. So make sure your FTP is bang on.
Yeah, and also for our Zwift users, when you complete a workout, you are given a TSS score for that workout as well. So if you haven't, then start taking a note of what TSS you're accumulating there. And most workouts also have a TSS score attached to it before you begin, so you know how hard it's going to be. So if your threshold, as you said there, Matt, is input correctly into your Zwift account, you can look at any workout, and it could be a 62 TSS, which would mean it's probably going to be generally moderate, or it could be a mid-70s TSS, which is going to be obviously a bit harder again. So looking at the TSS of a workout gives you an indication of the intensity as well.
Yeah, good point. And I guess one thing TSS doesn't factor in is heat. So, riding for an hour fairly hard might give you a TSS of 70. Doing that in 15 degrees is going to feel more comfortable and less stressful on your body compared to riding in 30-degree heat, where heat's really battling you. I guess there's no way to overcome that, is there, in terms of logging your data? You could manually tweak your TSS, but I guess that's getting a bit into the world of you're estimating then, aren't you?
Yeah, and this is the controversial side of TSS. When we start to look at it very closely, it's a guide to your workout, and it's a guide to your workouts over time as well. It does have its downfalls as well. You mentioned heat then as well. One of the other downfalls is that if you're doing a lot of 5-second, 6-second efforts, it doesn't quite pick up on those efforts. It's basically set to a 30-second rolling average. So efforts under 30 seconds don't really impact on TSS as much. So keep that in mind as well. But as a whole, it does provide a good way to quantify your workload. And I guess I've always explained it to athletes this way, that before TSS, what did we have? We had heart rate, or we had duration, or we had distance. So it really is just another way of quantifying the work that you're doing. So back in the day, we would record our hourly training hours per week. And then we started doing distance in hours. Then we started doing heart rate. So we're always trying to look at ways to quantify our training. And TSS is the current standard that allows us to do that as well. So I'm sure there'll be something coming up in the near future, another change, but for the moment, TSS is the best way to track your training and changes to your fitness as well.
Yeah, great points there. And final comment from me is, all these metrics, they are just metrics based on informed data, right? And it gives you an indication. But above all, we are humans, and feel is more important than a lot of this stuff. So your data may be showing you're really fatigued and your form's not quite there. But sometimes you feel good with it. So it's taking this data along with feedback and response, and using it. If you've got a coach, that's where a good coach comes into its own, where you take data. So data basically supports real world feelings from the rider. And just reminded me going back to when me and my brother first started training, literally as kids, kind of early teens. We had a little training diary, and it's literally pen and paper in a diary. And each day we used to write the number of hours we rode for. So it might be, back in those days, 30 minutes or 40 minutes on the rollers. And it'd basically be a number, 1, 2, or 3, whether it was easy, kind of moderate, or hard. And then used to do a kind of a face, whether we felt good, smiley face, didn't feel good, sad face, or kind of a straight line mouth of a feeling okay type thing. It's funny, that kind of that's one end of the extreme as a kid to all the data that is in the world now.
Yeah, you've got some really good points there, Matt. And this is probably a conversation that would be a separate podcast on its own. Just the metrics that are involved, and the way I see it, all coaches are guessing. No one really knows exactly what's going on, and all these metrics are used to eliminate the guesswork. And once that's done, we can then make more informed decisions about what's right for the athlete. And the point you made there about having the smiley faces and different emojis, you're ahead of your time, obviously. It basically is a way to as you said, the riders' feedback themselves is more important than the data. And studies have shown that if riders were to record their RPE, their rate of perceived exertion every day, and base their training off that, that would be almost just as good as going off all the coaches' data and metrics. So listening to your body is the key to anyone's training.
Good stuff. There you go. There you go, Jasper. There's a pretty comprehensive chat there about TSS and a bit more. Next question. We've got a question from Karen Deed, which was also via Twitter. And Karen's saying, there are so many different types of efforts that are talked about in cycling. How do I know which ones to do in any given week? I ride 5 times a week, 4 times Zwift sessions, and 1 road ride on the weekend. Now, should my 4 Zwift sessions be FTP based, power based? Should I race? Where do I head? And for me, Karen, this all comes down to giving yourself a structured training plan with a goal in mind. So, and working back from your goal. So if your goal is to do a sportif, for example, a one-off 100-mile sportif, your training will be slightly different to if you were looking to do a multi-day kind of alpine tour over kind of 5 days or something like that. And it'd also be very different if you were looking to race and do some criteriums or time trials. So I always say, it's very tricky to kind of to give you an answer, one size fits all. But to put it bluntly, if you want to be a sprinter, you need to develop your sprint. If you want to be a climber in long distance events, you need to develop your efficiency and threshold, and obviously weight is important. So yeah, kind of no one size fits all. But worth noting that Zwift now offer the flexible training plans, where you can choose a plan, set the duration, and off you go. So if you are doing 160k sportif, then you select the long-term plan for events of 100 to 200 kilometers, which has I think 4 sessions a week for 8 weeks, which sounds like it would fit your fit your needs.
Yeah, well, for me, I think Luke answered this one for us in his interview when he mentioned about training for the type of rider you need to be or want to be. So in this case, if Karen is training for a sportif and it's going to require long efforts, then, as you said, then do the long efforts. But if she's training for local criteriums, obviously training is going to be more focused on the shorter anaerobic work as well. So I think Luke's point there about training for the demands of the event is a good one to put in place as well.
Yeah, good stuff. Thanks, Luke. Next question is from Philip Cooper via Twitter. This is an interesting one, actually. And Philip's saying, how many hours a week do World Tour men and women train for, and how much of it is specific versus base riding? This is a very interesting one, and I guess it'll vary from rider to rider, from coach's approach to coach's approach. But I'll kick off on my initial thoughts, because my wife, Danny Rowe, is a World Tour pro on the women's side, and also with my brother on the men's side. Pretty close to the two of them. I know you coach both as well, Kev. But I think for me, the female race is obviously shorter in length, so there's less need for kind of the endurance side of things. But for in terms of the specific efforts, I'd say they're on par. I mean, I see Danny and Luke, for example, doing very similar types of efforts, and certainly the similar number of efforts. I just see kind of less general riding in and around the efforts. I think to try and quantify that in terms of number of hours, and Luke spoke about it. I think Matt alluded to the fact as well. They're doing, before the tour, these World Tour pros are doing 30 plus hours a week. Of course, the women don't have 3-week stage races. There is a 10-day stage race, the women's Giro. But even for that, it's probably towards the lower end of around 20 hours a week, I would say, for the women, to kind of broadly quantify it.
Yeah, actually, I really like this question too. And I'll answer it from the men's World Tour side. And for me, the range is quite different, and the training is quite different as well. So, for example, our sprinters are training much less. They're doing around 20 to 23 hours a week, and it isn't much at all. It doesn't sound like much at all. And our classics, our GC guys are doing up to 30 hours a week, and the training is very specific, but not for long periods. got to keep in mind that even these World Tour riders, they have motivation that wanes sometimes as well, and it's hard to be super focused for 52 weeks of the year. So we have very intense periods where it's high volume and very structured, and other periods where it's less volume and a bit more freedom as well. But with the sprinters, what we're finding now is that obviously volume is affecting leg speed and power. So we're going with less volume, and it really is just all very specific, high intensity work, and very, very few long rides or endurance involved with the sprinters. And for the GC guys and the classics guys, they're doing long hours, and they're doing the 90-minute efforts that Luke spoke about earlier, and those long days in the saddle as well.
Good stuff. Again, I think just kind of sum it all up. It is very individual. So even coming back to two Grand Tour riders, we got Matt Hayman saying he likes double ergo sessions, whereas Luke tends to be a bit more, he wants to get out on the road and just bank the hours. And some of that will come down to personal preference, coaching style, but also age. So we're coming back to the point, where Matt's probably got a lot of that endurance in him already. Luke's slightly younger. I'll say slightly younger, probably 10 years younger. He's just probably still developing that endurance side.
Yeah, well, obviously anyone's younger than Matt Hayman, aren't they?
Apart from Greg.
Yeah.
Only joking, Greg. We miss you, mate. Well, there you go, Philip. That's hopefully a comprehensive answer for you. Our next question is from Emily Mullen, who actually works for Zwift. So thanks for the question, Emily. Emily is saying, we talk a lot about having a strong core. What are some good core workouts that you can do with a broken collarbone? I'm told sit-ups are out. What's your take there, Kev?
Yeah, it's a tough one because obviously, first of all, safety and not further injuring the broken collarbone is the issue here. And obviously, Emily is keen to get back into fitness, as most athletes are. As we're seeing more and more athletes jumping on Zwift when they break a collarbone to get back into fitness. So it's obviously a good starting point. But in terms of core fitness, the problem with a broken collarbone is that if you're moving your good shoulder or your good arm, it does result in movement in the broken arm. So core work that involves upper body movements is pretty much out. So that leaves us with our lower body movements and core movement there. And what we suggested for Emily was to do simple things like pistol squats, where it's just got the one leg and squatting down with one leg out in front, forming the shape of a pistol. She was doing the wall sits for as long as she can there as well. And for a simple exercise, they can induce quite a lot of leg pain in those ones there. And I think she was doing some calf raises, a simple movement there that can be done seated and still get some lower leg work there as well. But the main point is that keeping both shoulders still and not further injuring obviously the collarbone that's been broken.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you're doing those pistol squats, make sure you don't fall over and do the other collarbone. That'll be disastrous.
Yeah, it does. You got to be cautious when you're prescribing movements for people that are injured. Obviously, you'd like to be there in person to put them through the workout. But the key message here is be careful, and if you're feeling any pain, then obviously stop. Yeah,
absolutely. And just one for me, whenever I'm sat at a desk, you can practice it. Is just sit upright, so get your posture perfect, and just tense your inner core. And it kind of feels like when you're sat on the toilet, that kind of feeling. But literally just try and deep inside your stomach, just tense it all up, and that's just gonna activate your core and get it firing. And obviously it's something you can do if you have got a broken collarbone. Easy to do, but it's also easy to do if you've got a desk job. At any point in time. So you can do that multiple times a day. All right, and our final question is from Yanni Gelato, which we received via Twitter. So thank you, Yanni, for your question. And Yanni's asking how best to prepare for multiple stage events like How to Route. And he says, your podcast is the bomb. Well, thank you, Yanni. So multiple stage events like Hout Route will. No, let's call Hout Route. Let's say it's 100 mile a day for. I'm not quite sure how long Hout Route is, but say it's five or 7 days of 100 mile riding. Ultimately, it's all about endurance. There's no point in being fast, being explosive and powerful. None of that really comes into it. It's all about being efficient, having lots of endurance. So in training, ultimately, you're gonna have to try and do as many miles as possible, without overcomplicating it. And for most of us who haven't got the luxury of being able to ride for 100 miles a day in training, back-to-back days, you're going to have to implement some sort of intervals to try and train smartly around this. And they're all going to be longer types of intervals. So some of the stuff that Luke spoke about, the longer 15-minute, 20-minute, half an hour, up to an hour, those type of efforts on Zwift would be perfect in that really controlled environment. Short warm-up, and then just get into prolonged periods of steady state riding. So zone 3, bottom end of zone 4, that type of stuff for a long period of time. All that is going to stand you instead for super long distance multi-day riding.
Yeah, all good points there. And I guess my take on that would be lots of sub-threshold work, as you mentioned, the long 10-minute up to 90-minute efforts below threshold, but also nutrition is going to play a big part in performance there as well, and also in training. So you're still burning a lot of carbs even though you're going below threshold. So keep the carbs and the hydration up, and it's just basically long hours in the saddle below threshold and get as much in as you can.
Yeah, great point about nutrition. And as Asker spoke to us about on one of the previous podcasts, when you are in an event like this, just think about fuel. So almost not saying disregard eating healthy, but it's all about just getting those carbohydrates in, getting that fuel in. So when it comes to dinner time, you just got to get those carbs in no matter what they are. So a pizza is not a bad thing. If you're riding 100 mile a day, you're going to burn that off no problem at all. So eat plentiful, hydrate as much as you can, and get the training done in advance as best you can. Lovely. Well, Kev, it was a pleasure as always. Shame we haven't got Greg on today. He's got loads of stuff going on. He's moving house from one country or one continent to another. So a big old task. But yeah, good to chat, Kev. Until next time, and keep on Zwifting.
Yeah, great, thanks, Matt. And let's keep an eye out for our 2 interviewees today and see how they go in the Tour de France. And I'll try and catch up with them mid-tour and see how they're faring. Yeah,
that'd be great. And if anyone's going out to watch the tour, make sure you've got your Aussie and your Welsh flags flying for Matt and Luke.
Absolutely.
All right, take care, man.
Right on.